In this lesson, we'll take a look at creating a vector displacement map stamp so that we can recreate sculpted detail very quickly. So the detail that we want to create is sort of the button that's going to be added to the couch, complete with the wrinkles and everything. And so what we can do is actually sculpt just that detail and then create a vector displacement map from that, and then we can apply that in multiple places and we can kind of reuse that wherever we want. That enables us to create that detail without having to sculpt it multiple times. So let's start with a new scene, and to create this we need a couple of planes. So let's create a plane, and I'm going to go into the object list and let's just name this one target. Let's duplicate our plane and let's rename this one source. So we've got one target, one source. Let's go ahead and turn off the target. The source is where we're going to be actually sculpting the detail. We have to sculpt it once. And so let's subdivide this until we get something that is a little bit more high res, kind of what we want. We can go down to kind of one of the lower levels and choose grab. And I want to come kind of in the middle here. There we go. I want to just pull some of this geometry down a little bit. So kind of create that indentation to where the button's actually going to be. So kind of pull that down just a little. And if you want to go down to kind of the lowest level and do it, you can do it there too. Okay, let's go back up to sort of a higher level here. And we can start to create the button. So if we go into freeze in our sculpt tools, I'm going to kind of come to the top and I want to just create this button shape here. So get kind of full strength. Let me get kind of a smaller brush size. We can change our fall off here. And just make sure my strength's all the way up. And we'll create kind of the where we want that button to be. Let's now go back and invert the freeze. And I'm just going to get the sculpt tool with kind of a low strength and kind of sculpt this up. Okay, we can smooth it down, but I'm going to kind of just raise this up and then smooth it back in a little bit. We can come in here kind of around the sides and create this sort of raised rim around the button. We can use flatten to come in and sort of flatten out the top of that. We could also use scrape to come in and do some of that as well. Again, just kind of smoothing it back out. We can also use sculpt with the existing vector displacement map stamps. So we could grab this second to the last one and come in here, and it just kind of gives us a little bit more of an overlap. If we come around here along the edges, and then you could grab your scrape and kind of scrape that down a little bit more. Okay, and if you wanted to add a little bit more detail, you could. I don't want to make it perfect. Okay, so that can be our sort of button. You can see it's extended down underneath, and so now we need to create the wrinkles. So I'm going to go ahead and invert the freeze. I'm going to choose sculpt, and I'm going to get this last vector displacement. And so this is just allowing us to create these sort of wrinkles here. So I'm going to get kind of a large brush size, and I can start to draw out these sort of wrinkles coming out. And I want to make sure that they blend. I don't want to go all the way to the edge of the plane. And so I'll just add these in periodically, but I'll make sure to fade them out all the way before they get to the edge here. You can get a kind of a smaller brush size if we want to, and kind of break those up a little bit. And the freeze of the button ensures that we don't have any geometry or any sculpted detail going across there. You can see if I jump up in levels, that freeze goes away. We can also come in here and let's say we'll grab bulge, and let's get kind of a little bit lower strength here, I can start to bulge that detail out as it hits that button. So just giving it a little bit more of an overlapping kind of a look. Same thing here. I don't want to go too crazy, and you don't want to do anything too distinct, because keeping in mind we're going to be using this for multiple buttons. And so if you have something that is really distinct and unique, that's going to be repeated and tiled. You know, if you have a button or a couch that has 6 buttons on it, all the buttons are going to have that distinctive detail. So you want to make kind of a generic one, and then maybe once you get it on there, you can start to make one of those a little bit more distinct. So here I'm just going to come in and add a few more little wrinkles kind of coming up. All right, let's go ahead and unfreeze all, and then I'm just going to grab the pinch tool and just kind of come in and pinch some of these lines together, especially the wrinkles that we created. Kind of pinch them back together. All right, so that's the detail that we want to be able to add to our couch. So we need to actually create a map that's going to enable us to recreate all of this detail, undercuts and everything. And so our source and target, the target, remember, is just that flat plane. This is what we're going to be using to bake the map. If we were to use the source, we can't do that really because the lowest level has been changed. Oops. Well, so let me, if we take a look at the lowest level of this, level 0, you can see it actually has some deformation to it. So we need to use a completely flat plane to calculate this from. So we'll go up to the highest level here, and we can, if we want to, turn the target on. But what we want to do is go into UVs and maps and extract texture maps. We'll create a new operation. We'll call this something like a button BDM, and we want to create a vector displacement map. So our target, we need to select the target, and we could add it in here. And then we can add the source into the source model. So it's going to look at level 0 of the target, which is the base, and it's going to look at the source detail and then bake that map based on the target. Okay, and so I'll pull this up so we can see it a little bit better. So we've got level 0 on the target, level 6 on the source. We could change this if we want to, but we want to use the current level. Okay, we can come down to image properties, and we can change the image size. So if we want to make it a little bit bigger, we can do that. Now, knowing that we're going to be applying this to a mesh as a stamp, we want to make sure that we choose relative tangent. We need to have that selected, so we'll make sure that we pick that. If we were outputting a map for, just to apply to a character as a displacement map, then we could use absolute, but we're going to use relative so that we can apply it to differently sized objects. And the map type, we're not using ptext, we're going to use a UV-based texture. So we'll choose texture, and then we can choose a file name. So I'm going to navigate to the project files, and let's just go into the images directory. We can choose a TIFF or an OpenEXR. Choose OpenEXR, and we'll just call this button. Save it. It's going to give us a little pop-up that says if you want to use this as a stamp or stencil, we need to add this suffix onto the end. Do we want to do that? Yes, we will. So we'll just say OK. And once we are done with that, you can check this on or off if you want to preview it, but we'll go ahead and leave it how it is. And let's go ahead and extract our map. So it's going to go through this process of extraction, of extracting our vector displacement. So we'll let that finish up. It's going to give us a little indication here when it's done. And now we can go into our image browser, and we're in the right folder. We'll choose this button displacement. And it doesn't look like anything has happened. It looks like it's completely black, but there is actually detail in here. The thing about the vector displacement maps is they are high dynamic range, and so they can contain a lot more detail than what we can see. And they can not only show us the height like a displacement map would, but they can also show us height as well as undercuts and positions. So I have a lot more detail in here. If I hit plus on the keyboard, I can change the exposures up here, and so we can start to see some of this detail in here, although it doesn't really look exactly like what we would think it should look like. So to actually apply this, let's go back and open up our scene with our couch in it. So I'm just going to open up 18 begin. You can save this, and I actually probably do want to save this so that you guys can see it. So let me save this really quick. And I'm just going to call this, we'll just call this VDM progress. It'll be kind of an auxiliary file, just in case you want to practice recalculating or rebaking it. Let's go ahead now and open up that 18 begin, because all we really need now is the map. All right, so now we've got our couch back. So here's our couch back. Let's subdivide it a few times, because it does need to have the resolution to be able to hold the geometry here. So we'll subdivide it a few times. You see we've got, so let's do it one more time. All right, now let's see how this is going to look. And so let's bring our image in. So we've got our image selected. I want to send this over, and I want to send it either as a stamp or a stencil. I'm going to just send it as a stencil. All right, so we'll send that over as a stencil. You can see it's on. And so what we can do now is I can come in and let's use sculpt. We'll turn off this, turn on full strength. I'm going to turn build up all the way up. All right, and let's get in position here. So let's say that I want to add one of these buttons kind of right in here, and I want it to be fairly large. All right, so I'll put the stamp or the stencil in position, and then I'll begin to sculpt through this. And you can see that as I sculpt, I'm adding that button right into that couch. Okay, because we blended it out to the edges, it blends out to those edges perfectly. We can come over here and do the same thing. So I just want to make sure that it's sized up correctly, and I can come over here and start to add this stamp in as well. And because I've got the build-up set so high, it's making sure that I get that full strength of that vector displacement in there. So you can see if I were to come in and sculpt both of these by themselves, that would be a lot of work. Okay, and for something that's basically the same. And so anytime that I can speed things up by doing things one time and reusing that is going to help a lot. And so we can use that by creating a vector displacement map and then recreating that detail here. I can turn the stencil off, and you can see that's in our mesh. Now from here we can go in and modify that if we wanted to, make it, whatever we want to do to it. We can modify that in here and make those really custom. So that's how we can use vector displacement maps to create detail on our meshes. That it is repeatable. We can do it over and over again. We only have to actually sculpt it one time. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is let's take our penny and begin sculpting that. So we'll take a look at using sculpt layers to help us do that, along with using stencils as well. So we'll take a look at that next.